Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports, bringing you sports from a spectator's point of view. This is episode number 115, and I wanted to cover a lot of topics between various leagues in kind of a bonus episode, at least for this week. But before we get into today's episode, remember to do a massive favor to help Spectator Sports grow, reach a broader audience. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and if you want to get clips from today's episode, we got that for you here on YouTube, as well as on TikTok. And if you want to enjoy Spectator Sports from an audio perspective, we got that for you too. Link to the Spotify as well as TikTok and the channel is all here. And let's get into today's episode. The Philadelphia 76ers announced that Joel Embiid is going to be missing the first week of the season, as well as he's going to be not playing any more back-to-backs. That is from the horse's mouth himself, Joel Embiid. Now, Philly has been very mum on the details. Even head coach Nick Nurse doesn't feel like he is in the total know about the extent of the plan for Joel Embiid and what the extent of this recent injury is. Now, of course, the question is, was he hurt in the Olympics? Is this due to the Olympics? Because we know that this guy, Joel Embiid, has had injury problems throughout his entire career. To add further insult to injury, Joel Embiid has announced that he will no longer be playing back-to-backs for the foreseeable future or even for the rest of his career. And it sounds like the plan is to essentially save Joel for the playoffs. The problem is, with that mindset, this still doesn't save you from freak accidents. Freak accidents happen. And this also means that you're not going to be in the best game shape because it takes some time to ramp this up. I mean, there's a preseason, but star players don't even play that much, and we're seeing now that there's been a regression with star players even playing in the regular season. So they come in, they're trying to go all in for the playoffs and see how the seeding is, and they don't even care about how the Sixers will finish this season in terms of the regular season standings. The other problem is that I find with this is this doesn't help with the chemistry, because we already know that Paul George is joining the Philadelphia 76ers, and his debut with the Sixers is also delayed due to a bone bruise in his knee that he suffered in the preseason. So that's another part. Thankfully for the Sixers, the rest of the roster is mostly unchanged. I mean, Andre Drummond is kind of an incremental part, backup center, but that's important as well. But the main thing is, how does Joel work with Paul George, and how does Tyrese work with Paul George, and then how does Paul George work with the other two? That is going to be the question. And with essentially punting the regular season, this puts them in a precarious situation. Seeding matters, and as many people are trying to say that, oh, you just get into the dance and you figure it out because there are dark horse teams out there in the playoffs. Well, tell me the last time a team that didn't have home court advantage for all four postseason series won a championship. Now, the recent example was the Dallas Mavericks, who made it all the way to the finals, but they still lost to the all-time great Boston Celtics. And the other thing is with this, the Celtics are still a very dominant team, and if anything, you want to thread the needle a little bit with this, right? That you think that the best chance to get to the conference finals is to avoid the Celtics until as late as possible. That means you can't get the 8th seed, you can't get the 4th seed, and you can't get the 5th seed. So that leaves you either with playing in the play-in tournament with the 7th seed, or getting the 6th seed but having to play on the road, and then it's that 2-3 matchup where your best competition there is the New York Knicks, who have made adjustments as well with bringing in Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. And I think that matchup is probably your best shot, either to get the 2 seed or the 3 seed, and then you even without home court advantage, we saw last year that this Sixers team gave the Knicks a big scare, 4-2, and it could have easily been Game 7, but the addition of Paul George, I think, kind of does outweigh the addition of Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. Now, on paper, I think the Knicks do have more depth, but the Sixers still have a puncher's chance. I mean, Joel Embiid, when healthy, is one of the best players on the planet. But the issue has always been injuries. This guy has had injury problems throughout his entire career. Starting off the first 2 years of his career, he was out with knee and foot injuries, complications with that. Even though he was drafted in 2014, he didn't make his rookie debut until 2016. And since then, he's missed time in and time out, stint after stint, due to various injuries suffered on his body. As of now, Joel Embiid has played in just 48% of eligible games in his entire career. Think about that, 48%. As a 10-year veteran who has, yes, been a multiple-time All-Star, now recently gold medalist, but also has an MVP in his back pocket. I have been very consistent, though, on this channel. The best ability is availability. I get on guys like Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, Kawhi, Paul George even, and now especially Joel Embiid. And it's very frustrating to see a player with so much God-given talent that he fails to be healthy consistently throughout his entire career. He just has a very brittle body. Now, he may come back early next week and Paul George would join him, and then the Sixers reel off a couple of wins, kind of restore our faith in this team. But regardless, the NBA is a marathon. We're only in October, the very first few weeks of the season. Things can change. Teams could make trades. Injuries do happen. And despite no matter the efforts of load management, whatever that means, it still doesn't guarantee that you will be ready to go come postseason time. Kawhi Leonard is out indefinitely due to his latest knee injury. We learned in the early days of training camp as Team USA was preparing for the Paris Olympics that Kawhi Leonard would be leaving the team due to a knee injury, and he already had knee problems coming into the playoffs with the Clippers, and he was in and out of the lineup against the Dallas Mavericks in the first round, ended up missing the rest of the series. We thought he might be ready for the Olympics, but that case he wasn't. Well, now there's a further delay because Shams Charania of ESPN came out with a report talking about how he's going to be missing probably a few weeks now. And this is now the latest stint of missed games for Kawhi Leonard, especially with the Clippers. Kawhi has missed 179 out of 435 eligible games during his tenure with the Clippers. But it's always just so interesting that he is healthy and ready to go when it's ready for contract extensions. Because just last year, he was ready to go, even played in his first back-to-back in years, and fleeced the Clippers for another 3-year extension worth $153 million. And that took out too much of the pie for the Clippers to retain Paul George, because they had the audacity to ask Paul George to take a pay cut, while Kawhi, whether we like it or not, has become a part-time player in this league. Let's just be honest. He hasn't been consistently there, even his days with the Spurs. He's been in and out of the lineup, especially the later 2 years, and that led to his trade with Toronto. Even in Toronto, they had to abide by his and Uncle Dennis's load management demands. And coming to the Clippers, same kind of deal. And what has that led the Clippers to do? Because outside of one Western Conference Finals appearance, which was the back end without Kawhi, he hasn't been there even for postseason matchups. I think the last time he even completed a series was in the first round of 2021. Well, we're heading into 4 years later, and this guy's knees are still failing him yet again. And going back to his Spurs days, the great Tony Parker had pretty damning statements about how this guy and his Uncle Dennis don't prioritize winning or basketball. I mean, they're here to make money, and if they win, that's a caveat. I mean, that's icing on the cake at that point. And he's going to have one of the weirdest careers where you see him have 2 finals MVPs, a few defensive player of the years, and then a whole bunch of missed games. He could be an all-time great if he just played a little bit more, but he is going to have one of the weirdest career arcs I've ever seen. I've been on this platform consistently talking about expanding replay across all sports. And another example has kind of triggered me with the NFL and Thursday Night Football. To be fair, this year for the referees, I thought have been pretty consistent and they've been pretty good. No blown calls have really led to a team winning or losing a game. Well, on Thursday night, the Minnesota Vikings were playing the LA Rams, and with the ball inside their 5-yard line, Sam Darnold drops back and they're down 8. They're not totally out of it. There's still a puncher's chance to somehow tie this game. But he goes down in the end zone for a safety, and it turns out that he was pulled down by the face mask. And Trey Blake is looking right at this scene. There's a picture about it. Even LASIK roasts him for it because he didn't see the face mask, which is odd because Sam Darnold's head and neck turn to the left. And in that motion, that's pretty clear that even if you grab like the shoulder pad, your neck and head isn't going to turn that direction, right? That's just not how a human body functions. But yet again, refs blow a call. The only thing I can think about is if the NFL expands replay. I've been on this consistently, and this is not even just for the NFL, it's for all sports, but let's just focus at the task at hand with the NFL. I understand refs have 7,000 things to worry about. They have to worry about holding calls. They have to worry about the offensive lineman or the offense being set. They have to look for so many little things. But that is a pretty blatant miss right there. And what I think that we need to see across all sports is that players and coaches need to be allowed to criticize referees and also have the referees come game in and game out talking to the media. What were these calls? What was the justification behind these calls? Allow some clarity to the fans, the consumer. Because when players criticize refs, and even coaches do as well, they get massive fines coming in through the mail. And if you're bad at your job, you should be criticized for it. I criticize players on here. I criticize coaches and decisions they make. Why are sports leagues protecting referees? They're not above them. Yes, they are somewhat of a reflection of that specific league. But if you're thinking about accountability, we need to allow that to be on the center focus. We need refs to be held accountable, allowed to be criticized by players or coaches or whatever team staff at that point. The other thing is penalties. I understand pass interference, holding, that happens on every play, and that, unfortunately, that can of worms was opened back when the Saints missed a PI call in the 2018 NFC Championship game against these very same LA Rams, and that led to coaches' challenges being allowed in the 2019 season, and that was a mess, not well handled. Well, face masks are pretty obvious. You look for the head turn, and that's something where I think that's clear, undisputed evidence that we can use for replay. If we expand replay for holding and PI, we can see that opens up Pandora's box. Well, the personal foul, especially on the quarterback who we are so prioritized in protecting, we should look at face masks as a indisputable penalty that can be reviewed, challenged, because the classic phrase is that if I can see it at home, the refs should be able to have that at their disposal too. Because, like we said, refs can miss things. That's fine. They're human. Well, what's the point of this technology if we don't use it to its fullest? So the league, one, needs to allow players and coaching staff to criticize refs. That's one thing I have been strong on personally. But at a minimum, you have this technology. Use it to its fullest, man. Like, come on here. Monday Night Football featured a doubleheader, but one of the games was on ESPN+. I think that's just the way, unfortunately, the NFL has been trending. We already saw a game last year in the playoffs that was on Peacock, exclusively on Peacock. Well, now we're seeing games being streamed on ESPN+, and I think that's just something we're going to see eventually, exclusive stream games. Well, not a lot of people got to see that, but one of the key plays in this game was a deep pass from Justin Herbert to everyone's favorite all-time bust receiver, Jalen Reagor. And Jalen caught the pass, but right on cue, as he's going to the end zone where he should have scored, he loses the ball, and the ball is jarred out forward and out of the end zone for a touchback. Cardinals ball. And in a game that was decided 17-15, 3 points makes all the difference. As an Eagles fan, I have seen so many botches and gas by this guy since he joined the Eagles. The receiver that was picked one spot before Justin Jefferson, one of the worst moves made under Howie Roseman's tenure. Pretty much every time this guy touches the ball, the possession turns to shit. It's a risk to even have him touch the ball because it could either go a negative play or even a turnover outright. I had to scream at my TV to catch the ball because there were so many drops, so many muff punts, fumbles, whatever it was, there was a miscue with Jalen Reagor. And he had the audacity to have this famous meme of a fancy car under a trailer park house. And that was when he was cut by the freaking New England Patriots, albeit. But now he's with the Chargers on their practice squad, and he had a chance to revive his career. If you catch a 44-yard touchdown pass from Justin Herbert, that's pretty good. But instead, it's yet again another all-time gaffe with this guy, and he will never live it down for being one of the all-time busts in the NFL. So that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Shout out to Joey for editing this podcast, and thank you again for tuning in to this episode of Spectator Sports. Greatly appreciated. Remember to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.